this is called stare decisis. This is Supreme Court law, established law of the land. Now, and this is encounter, now this is not our opinion, this is the law, for the so-called black leader shills that the Southern Christian Poverty Law Firm has set out, who they pay off, who are a couple of them domiciled in Philadelphia, and keep talking about this stuff is lunch. Now read the law.
The Supreme Court cases.
That's just some of them. Read them and read them clearly and distinctly.
Mind you, I keep this in my car, everybody, for this sheer purpose. 13 Supreme Court law case reports. Number 1, the right to travel, the right to mode of conveyance, the right to locomotion are all absolute rights, and the police cannot make void the exercise of rights. State versus Armstead.
Now, is that not the position that she held by law? And what did they do? They assassinated her, didn't they? And the black shills working for the Southern Christian Poverty Law Firm have been doing what? Knocking her, talking about she's out to lunch, trying to say that we set her up for assassination.
They don't want you to wake up.
Do you see? And she was upholding the law. And isn't that oath of ethics? Didn't they know what they was doing? Didn't she know? Because they were harassing and threatening her earlier. They even removed documents so they could cover up. And even while they were plotting, sending out a SWAT team to assassinate her, they were erasing her Facebook page at the same time.
Yep.
Now you tell me that's not a clear sign of conspiracy. Now, I'm not going to interrupt again. I want you to read them all. And then I want you to talk as a sister, as a human. And then look at these black shills that have been talking trash. Doesn't this information expose them? Now, go ahead, read it all the way through.
Number 2, the use of highways for the purpose of travel and transportation is not a mere privilege, but a common and fundamental right of which the public and natural beings cannot be rightfully deprived. Chicago Motor Coach versus Chicago 33, Illinois. Number 3, the right to park or travel is part of the liberty of which the natural person, citizen, cannot be deprived without due process of law under the 5th Amendment of the United States Constitution. That includes parking on Philadelphia streets. Number 4, the right of a citizen to travel upon public highways and to transport one's property thereon, either by carriage or automobile, is not a mere privilege, which a city may prohibit or permit at will, but a common right which he or she under the right to life and liberty, and which he or she has under the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Thomas versus Smith. Number 5, state police power extends only to immediate threats to public safety, health, welfare, and etc. Michigan versus Duke. Which speeding and driving are not, which was extended in California versus Farley. Number 6, the state is prohibited from violating substantive rights. Owen versus City. And it cannot do by one power, for example, police power, that is, for example, prohibit expressly to any other such power, for example, taxation, eminent domain, or any of those as a matter of law, nor indirectly that which is prohibited to it directly, which is pretty much saying that they can't violate any of their substantive rights.
And then make excuses by going around the corner to make up some kind of regular law, or I say some rule or some kind of ordinance to subvert the law and then take people's car or boot their car or take their car or even give them a ticket.
Right.
Continue.
Yes. Number 7, traveling in an automobile on the public roads is not a threat to the public safety or health and constituted as no hazard to the public, and such a traveler owed nothing more than due care as a regard of tort for negligence to the public, and the owner owed no other duty to the public. He or she and her auto having equal rights to the roadways or highways as horses and wagons, This same right, still substantive rule, in speeding, running stop signs, traveling without license plates or registration, are not threats to public safety and thus are not arrestable offenses. So I read that kind of fast. But it pretty much says that traveling in an automobile on public roads is not a threat to public safety or health, as long as you're driving with due care in regards for other people on the road. That the owner and its car have equal rights on the public highways, and I do say car as an auto, as horses, wagons, or anything else that you could use as a mode of conveyance for travel. Not running stop signs, speeding, traveling without a license or registration, none of these are threats to public safety and thus are not arrestable offenses.
Do you see the laws being violated? And they took an oath to uphold this, and they were what? They were hitmen, and they were absolutely violating the law. They targeted her, and what do you have these black shills talking trash, defending the gang of New York, pretending to be officers when they're carrying out Klan activities with the black shills paid off in the community to muddy the water.
Let it also be said that you're not an officer unless you're elected.
Exactly, which is
into
why
office.
you don't call them that, because they're not.
So when you go, what's the problem?
They're
with officer?
highwaymen, which you can also read in the law book.
You
Continue to
automatically
read.
give them jurisdiction. So,
Yes.
continuing on to number 8, under the United States Republic's constitutional system of government, and upon the individuality and intelligence of the citizen, the state does not claim control one's conduct to others, leaving one the sole judge as to all that affects oneself. Meaning, under the Constitution, you have the right to be your own master. I
It means
self-own
now you
my
understand that
master.
even the seatbelt fines and all that stuff is BS.
If you as the master choose not to wear a seatbelt, then you as the master
It's
of
your
sole
right.
decision.
You see what they've been doing, robbing the people? See why the Pope expunged their licenses? Continue to read.
Number 9, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them.
And they've been doing everything but that happening.
Miranda versus Arizona, and everybody's familiar with Miranda rights.
Yeah, continue.
10, the claim and exercise of constitutional rights cannot be converted into a crime. The claim and exercise of constitutional rights cannot be converted into a crime.
And what they've been doing, converting people's rights into crimes, call them sovereign citizen terrorists for exercising constitutional rights, and they're counting on the ignorance of the masses under the control of their Negro black leader guys that they put in the neighborhood. You see the point? Keep on reading.
Number 11, for a crime to exist, there must be an injured party.
It's called corpus delicti. Continue.
Corpus delicti. There can be no sanction nor penalty imposed on one because of this constitutional right.
Continue.
Number 12. If any tribunal, court, finds absence of proof of jurisdiction over a person and subject matter, the case must be dismissed. The accuser bears the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Louisville versus Motley.
So they don't have delegation of authority to carry out what they're carrying out, and when questioned, what are they doing? They're what? Threatening, shooting, beating up, and harming people and arresting them in violation of law and in violation of the oath of ethics, and people sitting around talking about they don't know.
But these are your law enforcers.
No, the people don't know. This is what's wrong. Continue.
13. Lack of federal jurisdiction cannot be waived or overcome by agreements of parties. Griffin versus Matthews. And want of jurisdiction may not be cured by the consent of parties.
That means you can't even give the right away, and they can't even take it. You can't even contract it away. So you can't even get a license to lose them. Do you understand? See why these? You see why these so-called with the role of these so-called black leaders really are to keep the people diverted? But it doesn't appear like that on the surface, does it? Does it? Until you restore the reference points to our people that has been removed from them. You know yourself that most of our people don't have this information,
No.
and the so-called black leaders don't give it to them. And why are they attacking the Moors? Because we've been giving the people the information that they've been paid to hold back. And so they take us as enemies because we're exposing them as what exactly they are, COINTELPRO operatives. And we don't have to say it. All we have to do is educate the people, and it becomes absolutely obvious.
So I have two more that
Go
aren't
ahead.
necessarily a part of the 13
Yes, go ahead.
original, but these are two of my favorites just
Go
because.
ahead. All right.
It says, a person driving an automobile cannot be stopped to see if he or she is licensed to drive, unless there is a reasonable suspicion the person is engaged in criminal conduct. That's Delaware versus Krause. But it's interesting because when you come to criminal conduct, you come to find in a different court case that it says traffic infractions are not a crime. People
And what do
versus
they
theft.
do? They be arresting the people who say crime.
Oh,
And
you
that-
had reasonable suspicion to pull me over,
Yes.
but nothing about driving is a crime.
Now you
so
see
it
them-
could never be reasonable suspicion to pull me over.
Now you see them, what do you call them? Them where they block off highways and force people into these cones and start asking them for stuff and their papers and stuff. That's a violation of law.
That happened to us once.
And them live stops and stuff like that. That's a violation of law.
We were driving through New Mexico, they were looking for Mexicans in the trunk.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
We'll continue.
I have a couple.
Go.
So, if a state converts a liberty into a privilege, the citizen can engage in the right with impunity. So,
That means you can sue, that doesn't it?
right.
Now you see why they blocking. Now you see why they put a hit on her, because she sued them. And their bonds were going up. They know that the masses are ignorant, so they set out their black shills to start attacking immediately to muddy the water and act like she was out to lunch. But they only can get away with that because they know this information is not available to our people.
Licenses are for the conduct of business, profession, occupation, the exercise of which they are a privilege. Licensing is in the nature of a special privilege.
That's CDLs. That's only for commerce. It's not for common people. Do you see how clear that is? Meaning that how far do they have to go to beat it into our head that it doesn't apply to the living person, natural person, that they've been imposing it on you. They've converted your right into a crime, converted it into a privilege, and then robbing you. Then stealing your stuff in the name of law, not in with law. And they've set up businesses robbing our people. And what? Economically destroying our families.
The purpose of this license or licensing in the nature of a special privilege is entitling licensee to do something that he or she would not be entitled to do without a license. Driving is something that you need a license to do, but you have
That's
a
for commerce
constitutional right
only.
to travel.
Right, now
As
you
natural
know that.
people, we have a constitutional right to travel. And then some people say, oh, well, they'll come take my car, or certain things about their car and registration.
Now what they're
about
saying
my
is what
tag?
these people practice. They're not, see at that point, they're not talking law. They're identifying the criminality, but they're not calling it criminality. That's where the problem is.
Right.
Because they're ignorant.
And they hold these people with authority that they
Yes,
have.
because they went down to the Army Navy store and bought a blue suit, and they're organized crime. So the Supreme Court is telling you that. And I know you've already read cases where the Supreme Court has declared those state courts and them traffic courts as incompetent. I know you read that.
Mhm.
Oh, there you go.
Mhm.
Why don't these so-called black leaders deal and expose this to the people, since they want to deal with our people's liberty? Because they would have to admit what? That the Moors are talking facts, not some belief system. But because they don't want this information out, because they're getting kickbacks from these corporate entities like the Southern Christian Poverty Law Firm, etc., they act like the Moors are out to lunch and creating problems. What they mean is, see, because if these Europeans can't steal people's cars, they can't give them they can't split the funds with their black leaders in the communities whose job it is to keep these people on this marching treadmill.
Now, speaking of that, this is the last Supreme Court case,
Go ahead.
and it's now my new favorite. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right from liability, for they are deemed to know the law.
So what are they saying? Are they excused?
No,
And what do we keep on doing?
excusing them.
And so if you excuse them, what are you doing? You're sanctioning the injury on your own self and your own people.
We're excusing them. We're letting
Yeah,
them get
there
away
is
with
no
everything
excuse.
that they're doing.
See, this is the whole point. There is no excuse, and we keep making it for them. Do you see why our people need this information? Is there a gray area? The gray area is their ignorance. And they keep interjecting their own biases and their beliefs. You're not dealing with biases and beliefs, you're dealing with the law. You're either going to be in the law or you're going to be out of it. Now you see why they call us people of color? Because they're fake, but they want the rights of humans. You see the problem?
Yes.
And then they keep on marching and praying and complaining because they don't have rights, but they themselves keep rejecting the law.
Yes, and remove themselves from the families, but want the families
Now
to
you
come
understand
support.
why Drew Ali said what coming back into the constitutional fold of government. You're part and parcel of this state government, but you keep diluting, practicing them things to delude to slavery. Then they got these shills out here promoting it, looking legitimate like black scholars. You get the point? Now you understand why they're attacking Moors, conscious Moors, even though they know they're Moors too. And they're doing all this black versus Moor. And you do, I'm telling you, but once you understand this, you understand that our job is to get this information to the people because they get caught in this gray area until they're really educated. And we got to get them over the hump of the emotional thing and make them think we're not attacking their black leader guys.
Right.
We're delivering them their knowledge of their birthright, and they keep thinking it's a belief.
They keep asking for help. They keep wanting an answer. We keep giving it to them. They go, "Oh, not that. We need other help from some."
Right. Know what they keep asking? We're drowning. Teach us how to swim, then you show them how to swim. No, I don't want you to teach me like that. I want you to teach me how I know how.
I don't want to dog
Well,
I
if
want
you
to
can't swim, listen to the instructions.